So part two, if you've not listened to part one on working out how much vert you need to do in your training, go back, have a look, and then come back to this one. So part two, I really wanted to go through some nuances, things that you need to consider on top of everything that we covered in part one. So first of all, terrain. Try and learn as much as you can about the terrain that you're racing on. Is it sandy? Is it likely to be muddy? Is it long, gradual fire trails? Is it short, sharp, technical climbs? This is all very important because you want to match that as best you can in training. So obviously if you can train on course, best case scenario, but most of us don't have the luxury to do that. So where you can, try and mimic as much as you can. Next, you want to think about the gradient of your climbs. How short and sharp or long and sharp are your climbs? So that's the gradient. It's really helpful when we've got sort of race websites like this one here, Buffalo, where you can just hover over and you can very easily work out the gradient of the climbing and the descending, because descending is very important. So for example, in a race like Buffalo, generally 20 to 30%, with some pitches up to 40%. So in all your training, if you're just covering sort of 10 to 15% pitches, then it's going to be quite a shock when you come to race day and your body's not used to the degree in which you're required to climb. So think about in your training the gradient, and this is more important especially as you nearer your race. Just really try and fine tune and sort of mirror the gradient requirements of your race in your training. The apps like Strava are very helpful. They've got lots of segments, so that's another way to go in and work out what gradients you're doing in training, and then you can reflect and see if that's actually matches the race requirements. Or you can hire a coach, because we've got all this access to data and we can do all the guesswork for you. But just keep that in the back of your mind. The gradient of the climbs is very important. And we did talk about in part one about the distribution of the elevation. So we gave the example of Kepler, where most of the climbing's at the beginning and the back end's much more runnable. And we spoke about it in part one in the context of if all your training was to match the front end of Kepler, think about running load and how your body's actually coping with that. But the other thing I wanted to layer on top of that is actually we're doing running races, and if a large portion of it is runnable, is your body ready to run? So your long training runs might be 25 to 30 kilometers, but in reality you're running 10 to 15 kilometers of that, and the rest is all hiking, which is great, which is important, but do you then need to alternate these climbing long runs with more runnable long runs, just so you can get that balance of being able to get the hiking, climbing done, but you also can run the runnable bits? Very important. So what goes up generally must come down, and in a lot of races you've got a lot of descending. And in previous videos I've spoken about eccentric load and really preparing the quads for the beating they're going to get on the downhills. So have a look at your race profile. Do you have sort of equal measure, or what do the downhills look like? What's the gradient of the downhills? How steep are they? And are you matching that in your training? Because it's very important to prepare them. So if you're planning your long run and you're looking to do a point to point and it's mostly climbing with not much descending, we need to sort of also consider, is that the best preparation for our training run? If you want to share any of your experiences around training and how you approached your training with regards to your climbing and descending and how you best prepared for your race, let us know below. Otherwise, next time.